Nigeria's manufacturing sector showed slight recovery in January 2025, with the Business Confidence Monitor Index improving from minus 2.43 in December to minus 0.66. However, challenges like high production costs, weak demand, and supply chain disruptions persist. Key subsectors, including motor vehicles and assembly, textile and pharmaceuticals, underperformed, while others saw mild gains due to stable demand. Business conditions improved slightly, but high financing costs, power shortages, and limited credit access remain obstacles. This discussion explores the report's inside sectoral trends and policy recommendations needed to drive sustained growth in Nigeria's manufacturing industry. And joining me for this, I have Muktar Mohammed, the CEO of Finance with Muktar. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
Thank you, Perpetua.
All right. I do not want to imagine that you or anyone else at that would have been surprised by this report. But my question is, how sustainable is this trend?
Well, you're surprised as I am. But again, it depends, like I keep saying, it's depending on where they get their data from and how sustainable is that trend. You just need to the follow-up to your report, then you'll be able to know how sustainable it is. So by the time you start asking, looking at sector by sector performance, you realize that the key sectors are still very, very down. So definitely that means sustainability is very low, and not with the type of policy that we've seen come out some days ago, the new 4%, the 15%, MPA 4% FO, onboard board tariff, all those will definitely begin to play a role going forward. So for now, I don't think it's something that is sustainable unless we do something drastic about it. Maybe the physical side especially seems to be the problem when it comes to the manufacturing sector, when it comes to this sector. So I'm not too confident, I'm too optimistic about going forward, how we can sustain it. I don't think we can sustain it.
Interesting. You talked about the NPA levy and all of this. One would have wondered why we're having that at this point in time, with all of the talks around, maybe some form of relief, yet we're having something like that. What does that even tell us about, the fiscal authority?
It tells us one thing. It tells us that they are just interested in revenue for themselves. To do projects, and they are not thinking about the lower cadre of Nigeria, especially the lower side of Nigeria, because when you look at all the sector, the manufacturing, they are the ones that do the job, provide job for most Nigerians, but they are not looking at that at all. And you can't blame them. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics is telling them that anyone that gets hired 1 hour in a day is employed. So for them, they think employment has improved, but I think they are just living in a false land. They need to come out of it and know that what they are doing to the economy, especially the manufacturing sector, the goods sector, is not good. It will cause a lot of job losses, and some reports say that a lot of companies lay off their staff in 2024, and they are doing that going to 2025. So I think the government need to sit up and begin to have an economic growth plan in regards to the impact on the lower cadres of Nigerians.
All right, just to go back to basic, what's the import of this particular report, whether it's positive or negative? What does it really mean generally?
Well, it depends on which side of the device you are. So to some people, to the government is positive, to the businessman it's still negative. Like I said, you realize that that report definitely is driven by the consumption, and the consumption has been stabilized because a lot of people have decided to live with that consumption habit of consuming low. So that has helped improve the data that we got, because a lot of people still now consume, but maybe not as before. Compared to some time ago, a lot of people do not even consume some of these household. And if you have been going to the market, and I think you're a lady, you realize that some of these household item has come down slightly, even if it is not more, because you are looking at an exchange rate of 1,900 some time ago to an exchange rate of between 1,600, 1,500. So we've seen slight reduction in those. You're looking at fuel consumption also. You're looking at a height of about 1,000 and now we are doing about 900. So all these are playing out in what you've seen, the positivity you saw in that report. But there are a lot of negative because the key sector that drive the manufacturing sector, that drive these non-oil sectors, are still struggling.
Right. I want us to take a quick look at the sectors that sort of underperformed and see what your thoughts are on either the causes and maybe how to drive growth in those sectors. Let's begin with textile, apparel and footwear, chemical and pharmaceutical products, plastic and rubber products, and we also have motor vehicles and assembly. Talk to us about these.
When you look at all this, you just listed now, you realize that all these sectors are largely sectors that are foreign exchange demand. They are foreign exchange driven. They need FX to run these sectors. And that is why you are seeing the low productivities of those sectors. Those are not sectors that are built by indigenous company. We still need FX. You're talking about chemical. You're talking about vehicle assembly. You're talking the pharmaceutical. You know, the pharmaceutical sector is even non-existent in Nigeria. This is because the big pharmaceutical companies are not even in the country any longer. So you are importing virtually any of these, almost every drug that we take now. And to add more challenges to that sector is that the government said they will remove tariff on health product, but that has not been done yet. So definitely you see that sector is struggling. A lot of Nigerians, have health challenge now, are looking for other means, and then those that were employed in that sector are out of employment also because what we are seeing now in that sector, especially the pharmaceuticals, is a rental sector. What I mean by rental sector is when you are running a rental economy where somebody else does have a monopoly in bringing in some products into the country. And so it's not like when you have that competition. So I'm not surprised at when you mention some of those sectors, because the reason for that is because they are highly driven by FX, and even some that are not driven by FX are affected by cost of production, which has to do with high energy costs. You know, energy cost is very high these days. You're talking about power, you're talking about diesel plant. So all these are challenges that have affected some of this sector that you have just mentioned.
Interesting. Let's talk about motor vehicles and assembly subsector. I mean, it's experienced a significant downturn. I would have thought that the high cost of importing and clearing vehicles would have made the local manufacturing companies more attractive. However, looking at what you said, the impact of Forex and how that could also impact on the activities, I feel that sort of offsets whatever gains we want to see from that sector. But let me get your balancing thought on this.
Yeah, but I think you've answered it the way I would have loved to answer it. So you've already answered. I just expatiate on what you just said. I was telling a friend this Sunday, I said it's more or less like you begin to see that the imported cars are beginning to come in, like not like before that you don't see them. Because I sometimes you just say in those major roads, visit from Apapa to Chile, you see that the cars are coming in again, not like maybe not like before, but you see that sector has adapted to the new normal, which is high exchange rate. And like you mentioned, the main catalyst whereby the cost of production is very high because you are looking at that FX. Like I said, it's an assembling plant. So some of those parts that are used for assembly are not made here in Nigeria. They are steel. We don't have a market-driven steel company. So they still bring it from the outside the shore of this country. They still pay tariff of it. They still have to look for FX to be able to bring some of this part to assemble here in Nigeria. It's not a production plant. And when you look at the assembly, then with the cost of production, which is the cost of assembling this part, you look at the high energy cost also that is involved with that and the exchange rate. So then by the time you put all these factors together, that brings you high cost of production. So it's still cheaper to bring in cars from outside the shore of this country than to even manufacture it inside, because you factor in the exchange, you factor in the clearance. The difference is much because of those exchanges, because of the clearance, and then the cost of production in Nigeria. It's just the same thing that happened in the petroleum sector until it became a price war. Cost of importing refined petroleum product was cheaper than the cost of production even when Dangote was producing it. You know, the import most of the major oil marketers said they were still importing because it was cheaper until Dangote had to bring down their cost. So for us to see those assembly plants, they may also be thinking of bringing down their cost. But theirs is very difficult in terms of bringing down their cost because, again, if you look at the assembly sector in Nigeria, we don't know Pujo. We don't have those Pujo assembly plant that we used to have in Kaduna. The only one we have is Innocent Motor in the east, and there's no competition, so that monopoly is still there. So, and if you look at Innocent Motor, mostly who are patronizing them are political appointees, government, federal government, state government, ministries. The individuals are not patronizing them because of the cost of production.
So talking about the cost of production and every other thing that sort of adds to it, what do we need to begin to do to address them, whether it is energy or whatever really? Do you think enough is going to address them?
There are a lot of challenges that they are going in that sector. Number one, high exchange rate. That is one. Secondly, cost of funding. Cost of funding is very high because of the high interest rate. So you are borrowing to do some of this business now. The cost of funding is really high. So what do? We need to look at that, stabilize that exchange rate and bring it as low as possible. We need also look at the cost of production. Also, it's a major cost. It's a major cost for consign in terms of a high cost of funding. So the CBN should be looking to bring down rate. And if you look at the economy as it stands today, with the kind of liquidity we have with the system, with the kind of borrowing that the government is planning to do, even increasing the budget deficit there, you know that that's going to be a big challenge. So those are part of the things we need to do. What will drive growth in this sector as it stands now is to look at these key indices that I've just said, cost of FX and also high cost of funding. Because some of these business cannot strive on their own because they need funding, and cost of funding is high. So those are the two things that we really need to look at. And then also the physical side, we also have to look at the area of tariff. We still say tariff is still a major issue. Now, if you take the 4%, you take the 15%, you are getting an increment of about 19% already. That will be passed back to the consumer. So there's a major challenge that we need to deal with in that sector, and that has to be the cost of tariff. They need to look at it at the levies in terms of tariff. They also look at cost of funding, how government can reduce that, and also lastly, we also need to look at that cost of production, which largely due to high energy costs.
All right, thank you so much. But just before I let you go, maybe I just want you to look at something, and that's the not so good subsector indices and what they mean. The first of them is Business Situation Index, which declined. We also have Investment Index, and then we have the cost of doing business. I believe we've done a bit of the cost of doing business. But that Investment Index, which dropped from 20.79 in December to minus 577 in January, can you just say something about it in less than 30 seconds, if that's possible?
Perpetual, what is driving that is, I will keep saying it, they've removed, they float the market. And when you talk about the investment, you're looking at investment from offshore, you're looking at foreign direct investment to drive that sector. Those investments are not coming because of the volatility in the exchange rate. As long as we continue to have this volatility, they will continue, we will not see those foreign direct investment, because up to this moment, we have not seen stability in the exchange rate. You can call it a corridor of stability. That is not enough to drive investors into your market. Investors need a stable exchange rate, especially when we have, like I said, the economy that we are running now is a rental economy. So you need to have a stable rate to even be able to survive in such an economy. So for now, the challenge is still the exchange rate volatility. Until we maintain stability, not just corridor of stability, the investment appetite will still be very, very low.
All right, thank you so much, Muktar Mohammed, CEO of Finance with Muktar, for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you for having me, Perpetua.